So we begin to deepen our attention by learning to look more deeply at when we've turned on ourselves, on what's going on inside ourselves, the pain that's there, and eventually, as I mentioned, that there's a more of a quality of looking through the eyes that are forgiving. We begin to look at others and see past that narrow aperture of what's wrong with them. I love this little essay by Alan Wallace, and I wanted to share this with you. I've been moving papers to find it here. He says, imagine walking along a sidewalk with your arms full of groceries, and someone roughly bumps into you so that you fall and your groceries are strewn all over the ground. And as you rise up from the puddle of broken eggs and tomato juice, you're ready to shout out, "You idiot, what's wrong with you? Are you blind?" But just before you can catch your breath to speak, you see that the person who bumped you is actually blind. He too is sprawled in the spilled groceries, and your anger vanishes in an instant to be replaced by sympathetic concern. Are you hurt? Can I help you up? Our situation actually is like that. I often use the metaphor of the dog with its leg in a trap, that if somebody is acting in a way that seems horrible, it's because they're feeling some horrible sufferings going on inside them. When someone is happy and free, they do not behave in ways that cause harm. So when we're caught in blame, as I'm describing, the other becomes an unreal other, kind of a two-dimensional character. The most direct way, should we be so fortunate to be able to unfold what's going on, is communicating, because then we can start to remember or find out who that person really is, and the armor starts to dissolve. Longfellow puts it, he says, if we could see the secret history of our enemies, if we really can see past the veil to who's there, it starts softening our hearts. So we need a path to reconciliation. And sometimes the path is outward, where we get to communicate and find out who the other is. But often we don't have that opportunity. And that's when we need these practices of forgiveness, where we work bringing compassion to where the hurt is in us, and then look through eyes that see more truly to the vulnerability in others. I'd like to share with you a story I bring out now and then that gives us a sense of what's possible in our hearts. And this story was told by a man who ran a rehabilitation program for juvenile defenders right here in D.C. And he describes a 14-year-old boy in his program who shot and killed an innocent teenager to prove himself to a gang, which we know happens. And at the trial, the mother of that child that was killed just sat kind of impassively silent until the end. The youth was convicted of the killing, and after the verdict was announced, she stood up, slowly stared directly at him, and she said, "I'm going to kill you." The youth was taken away to serve several years in the juvenile facility. Now, for the first half of the year, the mother of the slain child started visiting his killer. And he'd been living on the streets before killing, and she was the only visitor he had. And for a time they talked, and she left some money so he could get some snacks and so on. She started step by step to visit him more regularly, and she brought him food, and she brought him small gifts, and started to get to know him some. Near the end of his 3 years sentence, she asked him what he'd be doing when he got out, and he was confused and uncertain, so she offered to set him up with a job at a friend's company. And then she asked him about where he'd live, and since he had no family to return to, she offered him temporary use of the spare room in her home. So for 8 months he lived there, and he ate her food, and he went to work and the job, and then one evening she calls him into the living room to talk, and she sits down opposite of him and starts out. She said, "You remember that day in the courtroom when I looked at you and said, I was going to kill you? I sure do. She said, well, I did. I did not want the boy who could kill my son for no reason to remain alive on this earth. I wanted him to die. So that's why I started to visit you and bring you things. That's why I got to know you and I got you that job and I let you live in my house. That's how I set about changing you. And that old boy, he's gone. So now I want to ask you, since my son is gone and that killer is gone, if you'll stay here. I've got room and I'd like to adopt you if you'll let me. So she became the mother of her son's killer, the mother that he had never had. When I share that story, it's not with the intent of saying, well, we should be able to do that. Okay? I just want to make that clear because I hear that story and every time it's to imagine and having a son. It doesn't matter if you have a child or not, to imagine losing someone like that. Could we do that? We don't have to ask that question. It's more to sense that we have this possibility in our heart of experiencing huge, huge loss, going to the kingdom of Lord Yama, experiencing the worst, and discovering in the midst of it that quality of presence that can remember who we are and remember who another is and respond to that remembrance. That's a possibility. It's what this evolution of consciousness is about. We can move from fight-flight to attend and befriend. And as I mentioned, sometimes it's quick and sometimes it takes a while. And it feels important to say that for many of us with the deep wounds, it really is gradual. And the forgiving is not a one-shot. It's like we have to go through many, many rounds. Sometimes we're living with somebody who keeps on setting us off to that place where we feel victimized and hurt, and we have to keep on going back to being with that and holding with kindness and remembering again who that other person is 10,000 times. And we stay because there's something in the container and in the relationship that's worth it. Often the wounds are so deep that it's not possible to do the process alone. To try to stay with the pain is too much trauma, and we need the support of a healer, a teacher, a therapist. Even then, this shift from fight-flight to attend and befriend is our capacity. This is what the evolution of consciousness is about. And it's not because we can will it, but it's because we can sense out of wisdom that we're not free as long as we're caught in blame, and simply intend to forgive.